For coming today for the release of Hunger in Ohio, and also for some very exciting news. I'm joined here today by a number of my colleagues from the Ohio Association of Second Harvest Food Banks, as well as Ellen M. Gilligan, who is the president and secretary of the the HealthPath Foundation of Ohio, and Cheryl Boyce, who is the incoming chair for the foundation. Again, good afternoon. My name is Lisa Hamler-Fugitt, and I serve as the executive director for the Ohio Association of Second Harvest Food Banks, Ohio's largest charitable response to hunger. Again, I'm pleased to be joined by my colleagues today, both the association staff and as well as representatives from the HealthPath Foundation and their board of trustees. And she has some very good news to deliver after I deliver, unfortunately, some rather sad and startling news about the state of hunger in Ohio. The summary of the report is in your packets. As well, in front of me are each of the individual studies that were conducted by all of our food banks. And in your press kits include not only a summary of the national report, but it can also be found online at www.oashf.org. I encourage each of you to take a look at this study, as well as the details concerning the supporting methodology that was conducted. This is part of a nationwide study that was conducted by Feeding America, the National Food Bank Network, as well as Mathematica Policy Research. What the study finds, and this was the most comprehensive study ever conducted on the extent and severity of hunger, as well as the individuals who are forced to turn to local food pantries, emergency soup kitchens, and shelters. Again, all 12 of our food banks did participate in the study, and I am going to provide you with some of the highlights. You will clearly see that the data paints a very troubling picture of the state of hunger in Ohio, and that its growing numbers of Ohioans are being forced to turn to emergency food assistance in order to meet their families' essential basic needs for food. One startling statistic found on page 5 of the recap in your packet in the PowerPoint, it shows that on any average week, more than 225,000 different people will turn to an emergency food provider for assistance. Nearly 250,000 of our families, our friends, and our neighbors. That compares with just a little over 200,000 a week when the survey was last conducted in 2006. Additionally, the study finds that more than 1.4 million different people, more than 500,000 children, and nearly 130,000 seniors received emergency food assistance through our Ohio Food Bank networks last year. These findings represent an increase of 18% over the last period the study was conducted. It is morally reprehensible that we live in the wealthiest nation on earth, yet now, in Ohio, 1 in 8 Ohioans are struggling to make choices between food and other basic necessities. These are choices that no one should have to make, but particularly households with children. Insufficient nutrition has adverse effects on both physical, behavioral, and mental health, and unfortunately, lowered academic performances of children. It is critical that we ensure that no child in Ohio or America is forced to go to bed hungry. As we know, these children are the engine of all future economic growth and future vitality for our nation. The findings, again, are absolutely startling. What we know is that unemployment and underemployment are continuing to plague more and more Ohioans as the recession continues to deepen We see the unemployment rates increasing, that yet more families are finding themselves in a situation, many for the first time, of having to turn to an emergency food provider. While 32% of the client households surveyed reported that they had at least one adult working, 79% of adult clients younger than age 65 are currently unemployed. Among those clients who were interviewed and yet not employed, long-term unemployment is plaguing 44% who report that they have been without a job for at least 2 years. 7.1% have recently lost their jobs and have been unemployed for 3 months or less, and 13.7% report that the client households have worked before in managerial or professional jobs. Our clients are poor. Unfortunately, some 75% of the households seeking emergency food assistance report incomes well below the federal poverty level. Nearly 7.5% of the client households also report that they are homeless, up nearly 25% from the 2006 findings. And it will be very difficult for many of our clients to find employment, with 40% reporting that they do not have access to a working car. Unfortunately, hunger and a lack of access to food drive our clients to make very difficult choices between food and other basic necessities. In the last 12 months, 52% were forced to choose between food and utilities, up from 45% in 2006. 43% report having to choose between food and rent and mortgage, 43% between food and gasoline, and unfortunately 42% are making choices between food and medicine or medical care, and 38% between food and transportation. In these extremely troubling times, we know that nearly within our emergency food provider network, that the very agencies who are on the front line, who are struggling every day to hold back the rising tide of more Ohioans needing more food more frequently, that 78% of those agencies reported that they have seen an increase since 2006 of those turning to them for assistance. Nearly 8 out of every 10 of our providers now report serving more families. And this is at a time when, again, Ohio's population has remained relatively stagnant.